Okay, we'll get started. Welcome, Melissa Groves Azero, the Hormone Dietitian, to Ignite Your Power podcast. We're so excited that you're here to talk to us because you have such a unique perspective on what we eat and what we put in our bodies. And I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to dive in.
So you have a really unique perspective because you didn't start out in this field, but have grown to kind of find your passion and find your groove. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so back in 1998, I got a degree in English and dance. And I was in New York City. And so naturally, that led to me working in pharmaceutical advertising. Natural jump from dance to that. I had actually come from a hospital family. My grandmother was an RN. My dad was a respiratory therapist. My mom was an EKG technician. And so I actually spent a lot of time around the hospital growing up. And actually one of my first jobs was working in admitting. And so I've always been good at spelling, and I just was familiar with all of these medical terms. And so I landed in pharmaceutical advertising as a proofreader and then worked my way up to editor. And then a creative director approached me and she said, have you ever considered becoming a writer, a copywriter? And I was like, I'm not a creative writer. I don't know. And she's like, you don't have to be a creative writer. It's basically like writing research papers, which is what I was always good at, combing through the research, pulling out the points that people would care about, and then, talking about them in a way that the general public would understand. And, we've all heard the stories about the advertising lifestyle. Like it really kind of is just like Mad Men, but, now. So I was working 90-hour weeks. I was traveling all the time. I barely spent any time at home. I was living off takeout. It was really starting to affect my mental and physical health. Really, the last straw for me was I had run the New York City Marathon in 2008 and qualified to run the next year. And I had to bail because I had just been traveling so much for work. And I wanted to run it again, but I wanted to run better than I ran last time. And so I wasn't going to be able to do that. So I quit. And then the next year, 2010, was when that happened again. And that for me was like, something has to shift, like something has to change, because I'm no longer willing to sacrifice the things that I want for me and my health for this job. Long story short, the one takeaway the one good thing that came out of all of that was I realized how much I liked science. I had never really, we took anatomy as part of the dance major, and I had taken, the high school science classes, but I pretty rapidly got into the really highly scientific drug developments. In particular, I was working in oncology. And so it was all of these sort of cellular mechanisms of action and the pathways. And I really enjoyed that. And I enjoyed learning. And so that sort of made me come to the conclusion, like, what can I do with all of this? I like science, I like to help people, I like food and nutrition. And so that was when I was like, I'm going to go back to school. And so I went back to school and I got another degree in nutrition. And then, similar to a residency, dietitians do a 1-year internship. So I did that. And so I opened my practice at the beginning of 2018.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. The journey that you've been through to kind of find where you knew you needed to be, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people comment on the fact that, oh, it was so brave for you to, go back to school or abandon your entire life. And I really think it was almost a matter of survival. Like I had to do it, like, because what I was doing was not working. And it was hard. It was a really hard 7 years to get that degree and get those letters after my name and be able to practice. But I have zero regrets. I am so, so happy doing what I do, and it's so fulfilling. And, I'm just much happier working with people directly rather than with pharmaceutical companies, to develop new medications.
Yeah, so this is 1 year in my podcast, and I've interviewed about 40 badass female entrepreneurs in the health and wellness space. And we all have the similar core theme of sort of our health being the driver for how we've changed what we're doing and how we end up ultimately where we are in the passion that we're doing. So I just find that so fascinating that sort of your innate, inside that says it's time to switch something. This is not working. I'm losing who I am in order to do this job. And while people have to do that job, it still wasn't what was driving you. You wanted to be able to run your marathon. You wanted to be able to be who you wanted to be without having to sacrifice that. So that's amazing.
I think it's interesting too, especially with high achieving women, is oftentimes it becomes all too easy to slide back into that, even when you are running your own business. And my husband jokes all the time. He's like, wow, your boss is really tough on you. She doesn't give you days off. And like, yeah, we're working on it. It's a work in progress,
Yes. And it's also hard to leave something that's comforting. I'm sure being in that job, you were familiar with what you've been doing and you've been writing. And so there's a comfort to that as well. That's the same as when I was in my traditional private practice. It was hard to convince myself sometimes it's a good idea to leave that model because it is comforting. It's what you already know and you're good at. So sometimes hard to make that leap. So that's amazing that you did that. And I know there are a lot of women who follow you who also are clients of yours that are grateful that you did that as well.
Yes, there are several dozens, maybe upwards of 100 now babies here who would not have been here had I not worked with those women. So yeah, it makes me grateful every day.
So let's talk about, because you're considered you call yourself the hormone dietitian.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you found a niche in an area that sort of is your strong suit. And so tell us how you kind of got into that world of hormones and how to balance your hormones naturally.
Yeah, I think, like a lot of women, there's always a personal thread to what you end up working on and what you're passionate about. I specialize primarily in PCOS and fertility. I do not have PCOS myself. What I struggled with during all those years in advertising and working the 90-hour weeks and takeout and too much coffee and too much wine was I couldn't go off the pill. Like I was on the pill for, since 18. And I kept trying to go off and I couldn't. Like I was just crippled, just, on my couch for 2 weeks out of every month, like really not understanding why I felt so terrible, why I couldn't function. Always had heavy periods, which was part of the reason for going on the pill in the first place. Breast cancer and hysterectomies on both sides of my family. And so really like strong estrogen problems in my family. So finally, I did end up becoming diagnosed with PMDD, which sort of just opened my eyes to what was really going on, where these seemingly unconnected symptoms, especially around mood, were actually cyclical in nature and they were being affected by my hormones, which the pill had been masking, had been shutting that system down. So I wasn't feeling it as much. So, I knew what it was like to struggle with hormone issues. My first job as an RD was working in the office of a functional medicine dietitian who specialized in gut health. Like with a lot of local in-person practices, you get a lot of calls from people who are not necessarily the right fit for that niche. And she was kind of at the point where she just wanted to focus on the gut health and she didn't really want to deal with anything else. So she had brought me in to sort of deal with the overflow clientele, most of whom were interested in weight loss, which is one of the primary drivers that brings someone into the office of a dietitian. From a functional medicine perspective, you're looking for the root causes, like why can't this person lose weight? I'm looking at what they're eating, I'm looking at how much they're moving, and something's not adding up here. So what's going on? And so that's when, through the deeper testing, we would identify hypothyroid or insulin resistance. And that was the first place I came across someone who had PCOS. And I had never heard of it. It wasn't something that we learned about in school. And I just instantly was like, we can figure this out. We can do something for this woman. And so I did so much research into how to do it, and got her to lower her insulin resistance, lower that inflammation, improve her gut health, improve her hormone health. And then the scale started shifting, but not until all of those other things were coming into better balance. And so that was really my first experience. And when I opened my own practice and I wanted to focus on, a specific area, that was a really easy one for me to focus on, because I knew how much of a difference nutrition and lifestyle could play in that condition. There was nobody around me doing it at the time. Actually, even 4 years ago, there were fewer practitioners online talking about it. And it's just super rewarding, because it's just, the smallest little changes and shifting your focus to the right things make a huge difference. So I get very angry on behalf of people with PCOS, because they're often given the short end of the stick when they go to their doctors, and they're not getting proper diagnostic testing. They're not having the things ruled out that they should have ruled out, before they're getting that PCOS diagnosis. They're not getting tested to see, are they insulin resistant? Do they have inflammation? What's going on with their specific hormone levels? And so I'm one of those people where, like, if you come, I'm Sicilian and a New Yorker. So it's like, if you come at me, I'm like, whatever, you're dead to me. If you come at someone I care about, I am going to hunt you down, hunt your family down. I will not let I'm just one of those people. So I became very angry on behalf of people with PCOS. And so I just continue to fight for a better way for them.
You said so many valuable pieces of information right there. It's hard to even summarize it. It's amazing. I'm Sicilian too, just so you know. Raimondi is my maiden name. But yeah, it's so incredibly important. This is part of what drove me into this area as well. I have PCOS and hypothyroidism. That's part of the reason why I ended up going the integrative medicine or alternative medicine route, was because I saw my own OB and couldn't get pregnant, and was given the same answers that most PCOS women are, which is, it'll happen. Just kind of be patient. It'll happen. Come back in a year or so. And so I understand that struggle. And what you said is so incredibly valuable, that you don't have to settle for what you're being told, which is just either come back when you get pregnant, or do you want to be on the pill? Like, that's essentially the standard. And I understand as well, because I gave that advice for a long time until I realized it was a better option. I said that to women, and I look back now and think, wow, I just never even opened my mind to the possibility there was other options. So I'm so glad that you said that, because I think it's so valuable that women know, like, you don't have to settle for that answer, which is come back when you want to get pregnant or a birth control pill. There are other options. And likely, like you said, they were actually not given enough testing to look at how they can be helped, because we sort of have a traditional way of looking at things that says, here's the basic labs to be diagnosed as PCOS, but you need more than the basic labs, understanding that PCOS is a metabolic problem and not just a girl problem, which is where I think a lot of obstetricians look at it as say, well, it's just a female issue. It's like, well, no. This is one of the only diseases in women's health where it literally spans every single category of health. It affects your reproductive, it affects your mental health, it affects your metabolic health, it affects everything that you have. So I'm so glad that you said that, because I think that's incredibly valuable for women to understand how important it is to not settle for that answer.
Yeah, and I think, we are making progress. I think, when the international expert guidelines came out a couple years back, it's the first time they were really talking about nutrition and lifestyle as valid approaches, and talking about the need for an interdisciplinary team when working with PCOS. And, trying to approach some of those root causes like insulin resistance with treatments like metformin, which, are actually treating the underlying cause of many of the symptoms. And I think, there is still a lot of misinformation out there about it being just a reproductive condition, even among women themselves. When they're reaching out to me, they're, well, I've had my children, so I don't have to worry about it anymore, right? And I think that's where, nutrition and lifestyle are so effective, because the metabolic parts of the condition, the prediabetes and the diabetes, we know nutrition makes a difference there. We know lifestyle makes a difference there. And so, really focusing on the whole person. And I really see, irregular menstrual cycles are just a canary in the coal mine. If one system isn't performing optimally, chances are other systems aren't doing so great either.
Yeah, I think that sort of concept of the menstrual cycle being the sixth vital sign that's been promoted, I think is incredibly important, because we don't sort of look at it as a sign of things that are going wrong, but it is. If it's not, it's a hormonal imbalance. And so where is the hormonal balance lying? That's the question. So I love that you brought about misinformation, because I know this is also a passion of your Sicilian blood about getting the good information out there. So let's, and mine as well. I think it's so incredibly important to make sure that people know that people need good information. Like they need to know that what they're hearing is actually science backed, and there's, information that's going to help them versus sort of the latest trend. So I know that you are a big advocate on Instagram about trying to promote medical science backed information. So and I don't want to take the words out of your mouth, but I know that that's something that's important to you. So tell us kind of, how do women find that information? Like, how do they know that this is good stuff to be listening to?
Yeah, you definitely want to look at, whoever you're following. You want to do a little digging into them, especially before giving them any of your money, right? You want to make sure that you're getting quality information. And so, I'm a big fan of stalking someone's about page on their website before I buy something from them. I want to know, where'd you go to school? Where'd you learn, all the things that you claim to know. So you do want to look at someone's credentials. That's not a guarantee that what they are promoting is evidence-based. And there is a little bit of confusion about what constitutes evidence-based. Even in the medical field, I hear it a lot. It's like, if there's not, randomized controlled trials and thousands of participants, it's not evidence-based. But that's actually not the case. Evidence-based medicine is, the best available evidence to date. So maybe there have been a few studies that show something promising, in combination with your clinical judgment and expertise, in combination with what the patient wants and needs. So, we could have a diet that says it's the best diet for PCOS. It's been proven in, randomized clinical trial with 30,000 patients. But if the patient doesn't want to do it, that's not the best diet for them, or if it doesn't align with their goals. So I think, it's very complicated. If you hear someone saying something, try to find the original research yourself. I often will post the PubMed ID number, so you can Google that, or other people post the DOI number. You can Google that and the study will pop right up. Because oftentimes, I'll see someone promoting something based on a study. For example, that you have to avoid gluten for PCOS. I see that promoted in conjunction with one study that was a Petri dish study. So they took out cells from the stomach lining and put them in a Petri dish, and then saw how they reacted to gluten. But before they did that, they removed the digestive enzymes that were naturally present in the stomach. And so, if you do the digging and you don't just take a study on face value, and this goes for books too, like very popular books out there will recommend things. And if you look at the actual study, it's just, iffy iffy science at best. So, that being said, we have to take into account, does this have the potential to do harm? So, let's say avoiding gluten. Okay, for some people, that might not cause harm. Maybe they have access to gluten-free foods. Maybe they have a budget that allows them to purchase gluten-free foods. Maybe they really don't care for bread or pasta all that much. It's just not a part of their lives and their culture. For other people, removing gluten, even though it seems like kind of an innocuous recommendation, actually causes harm to their mental health and their social well-being. If you can't go out to a restaurant with your friends or your family, or you can't eat your family's traditional holiday meals, it's very isolating and can be triggering. So, you really have to weigh whatever recommendation you're reading against the current science and against how you personally feel and how it will affect you personally. So it gets very complicated. And that's why I feel like, as a dietitian, whenever anybody asks me about a food like that, my most common answer is it depends. It depends on a lot of things. I think it gets recommended a lot to cut out gluten because it's, quote unquote, inflammatory, but it's not inflammatory to all people. And not all people with PCOS have inflammation as one of their root causes. So, you may be unnecessarily making things harder on yourself than you have to.
Yeah, and this goes back to being with a licensed or someone with good credentials that can help you personalize your own approach to your treatment versus a cookie cutter approach where everybody gets the same. Just go gluten-free, dairy-free, and your life will be awesome. And that's all you need to do. And for the majority of patients and clients, when I'm doing health coaching, it's really difficult to do that. And when you fail at a diet, it really psychologically puts you into this state where you feel like nothing's going to work. And then it becomes really hard to then find the right approach. So personalizing someone's treatment plan, just like what you do and what I do, is so incredibly important to see what is it that they want to eat? What is it that they can eat financially? Like, do they have feed forward kids? Can they, how is that working out? And then what's going to work for their body to help them, reverse their symptoms. So I think it's incredibly valuable. I'm so glad that you are online to be able to, hold that flag up to say it needs to be personalized and it needs to be science driven and it needs to be about what works for you and not what the masses, in other words.
Yeah, I get a lot of people in my programs who, did try. They went gluten-free, dairy-free, they did it, strictly for 3, 6 months, and periods didn't come back. Their insulin levels didn't get any better, and they feel like failures. Like, I did it. I gave it my best shot. What's wrong with me? Why can't I make it work? And it's not about you. It's about the plan wasn't right for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It has to be personalized. It has to be about what works for you and all the factors that go into nutrition and lifestyle and how to make your plan, your roadmap for you. And sometimes you come up with a plan and it changes a couple years later and you have to readdress again to see what went differently or what happened or how that works. I mean, I've had clients who said, keto works for me. And I'm like, great, keto works for you. That's great. Like, stick with what works for you. You don't have to change those plans. But if you're having problems, that's when we need to sort of readdress what's happening with your body specifically.
No, and that's a great point. I think there's two sort of main times in a woman's life when you might need to reevaluate the plan. And the first one is postpartum. There's a lot of hormone shifts that happen during that time, and what worked before you got pregnant may not necessarily work for you now. And you and I were chatting before we started about being in our 40s and being on social media, but perimenopause is another time where you may start to find that things that always worked for you, suddenly you're having new issues pop up. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes symptoms that don't necessarily, that's the unique thing about PCOS, is like there's so many symptoms that like it's hard to sometimes connect those dots for some women who are like, "Oh, I'm having pelvic pain and incontinence. It's like, well, that actually could be hormone related. So, with some of these dots that aren't necessarily connected, we sometimes have to help connect for other people.
Yeah, people say that in my programs all the time. I have a whole module on gut health, for example, and it's kind of amazing the people who are like, I've had IBS and PCOS for years and years and years, and nobody ever told me that they might actually be connected, or PCOS and thyroid issues. There's a strong connection there too, and like we said before, you're a whole person. You're functioning as a whole system, and everything is interconnected. So it makes sense if something's not quite going right hormonally, something else might be wrong in another area of the body.
One thing I love about your courses and your programs is that you talk a lot about adding things into your diet, not subtracting. And most people on the online space are all about getting rid of things versus
Mm-hmm.
adding to your diet. And so I wonder if you mind talking to us a little bit kind of about that philosophy, because that's something that I try to talk about, and I love to think about how can we add things to our nutrition plan, not take away everything.
Yeah. So the way I look at it is, the most important thing when it comes to PCOS and nutrition is keeping your blood sugar balanced. And this goes for all women, not just women with PCOS. There are far too many women riding that blood sugar roller coaster every day, where it's just, they're spiking and they're crashing, and it's just affecting every system in their body, probably in ways that they don't intend for it to happen. So we focus on blood sugar balance as foundational. Like, that's the first step for everybody. I treat everybody as if they are insulin resistant unless proven otherwise, because the number is so high. At 75 to 90% of people with PCOS do have, some degree of insulin resistance. And that's the thing that leads to those serious complications down the road, like type 2 diabetes. So if we can prevent that from happening, that is goal number one. And the way that we do that is by, sort of the negative way of phrasing it would be, don't eat carbs alone. Don't eat carbs by themselves, because, even healthy carbs like a banana is going to spike your blood sugar, and then it's going to crash. And then you're going to be on that roller coaster. And you're going to be leading to cravings. It's going to be leading to fatigue. You're just not going to feel well. So what we do instead is always make sure that no matter what else is on your plate, you make sure you have a source of protein, fat, and fiber.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's, talk about pizza. For example, pizza is a pretty common Friday night occurrence for me, for many of my clients. Friday night pizza is a thing. So we look at the pizza, and does it have protein? Well, it's got some. If you've got some cheese and some meat, does it have fat? Yes, it has plenty of fat. Whether it's the healthy kind of fat, yeah. And then fiber. Most pizzas are made with white flour. So there's not going to be any fiber there. You could add some vegetables. That's going to add a little bit of fiber. So like, really what the pizza is missing is a little bit of protein and all of the fiber to make that meal a balanced meal. So, if you cut the amount of pizza you eat in half, add a half a bag of bagged salad and some roasted chicken on top, then you've got protein, fat, fiber, and the pizza that you enjoy. And that's a far more sustainable way to eat than telling yourself, I can't ever eat pizza. I don't know. I mean, I think most of us have had the experience of having been on a diet at some point in the past, or telling ourselves, I can't eat this food for whatever reason. And it almost never goes well. We end up, because the willpower only lasts for so long. So like, the second that willpower gives in, and you allow yourself to eat a little bit of pizza, then suddenly you've eaten the whole pizza, and you don't even know what happened, because your body was just like in that scarcity mindset where it's like, she's letting us eat pizza, stop the presses. We don't know when we're ever going to get to eat pizza again. Let's eat it all now. And then you feel like crap. And it's just, you've sort of done that to yourself. Whereas if you incorporated that food in a way that was balanced in a regular manner, it kind of takes away that allure of the forbidden food. I think, and I see this all the time. So January is actually a pretty quiet month for me in my business. February is my busiest month. And I think it's because everyone has gone on their elimination diet in January. And then, crashed and burned sometime mid to late January. And then they're starting to think about, well, there's got to be something else. There's got to be a better way. And so that's when my phone is ringing off the hook, is, post that diet frenzy that happens every January.
Yeah, and I think in that pizza analogy too is then you eat the pizza and then you go, well, I've already messed up my diet. I'm going to have the ice cream. And then tomorrow morning, I'm going to have the waffle. And you get into this sort of cascading of emotions where it's about, oh, well, I already messed up. So this week it's a wash. We'll just continue to eat the way that we are. And I try to encourage my patients to say, like, reset the next meal. Like, it's never too late to sort of reset and do the next meal. It doesn't have to be that the whole day is ruined because you ate 3 waffles and nothing else. Just at lunch is a new opportunity, a new chance to start again, and just, think of it sort of that way too. And also with balancing blood sugars, it's important not to skip meals. A lot of people sort of, especially holiday time, they won't eat breakfast or lunch and they're like, I'm just going to go nuts at dinner at my family's house. And that's like the worst approach, is to miss all your meals and then just eat everything at 8 o'clock at night. it's very, very, very poor for balancing blood sugars for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is research that eating the bulk of your calories earlier in the day, and there's research in PCOS showing this,
Yes.
that eating calories earlier in the day is better for a lot of markers, including testosterone and LH levels. And it's, just a matter of, fueling your body properly so that you're not getting into that eat everything in the kitchen state that happens when we get home from work and are starving. I think it's important too, that what you were talking about with not starting over every Monday. Like, how many Mondays are you going to start over? Or, what I'm hearing a lot right now is, I'm not ready right now. I'll reach out in January. It's like, well, there's still like 15 days left of the year, or 12 days left of the year. How many days are left of the year right now? But it's like, those are days you can continue to focus on your health and take care of you, so that maybe you get through the holidays in a more balanced state and you're not feeling terrible come January 1st.
Yeah, every day is an opportunity to try to optimize your health, and it doesn't all have to be solved in 12 days. It could take 6 months to 9 months to figure out a good routine for you, but every day is an opportunity to start again and try to say, well, maybe what could I do differently? I eat this chicken salad every day. What can I do differently to then add some olive oil, to then add some pine nuts, to then whatever it is, to try to sort of see it in a different way, to then not have to overeat at dinner. So yeah, that study that you reference is fantastic, looking at weight loss, especially with PCOS women and the women that ate their calories in the breakfast versus later in the day, their first half of the day. And it is definitely unique in PCOS that we have insulin sensitivity higher in the morning, and, in sort of balancing with our circadian rhythm and having being outside in the morning. Like, that's kind of interesting, that whole concept of timing your meals. And I think it's really important for women with PCOS not to skip all day and then eat a ton at 8 p.m. with their family, because you're likely to set yourself up for, essentially it could take 3 or 4 days to get back into a regular rhythm again. And so that can be discouraging.
Yeah, I get that a lot. One of the things that people say to me is, well, I'm just not hungry for breakfast. But if you've gotten yourself in that cycle where you're eating the majority of your calories, after 6 p.m., and maybe you're having snacks after dinner, then of course you're not hungry when you wake up. You're still full from last night. So it kind of takes resetting that cycle.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to tell us about your podcast, that you are now a wonderful podcaster? You want to tell us a little bit about your new adventure?
Yeah, I am so excited. We just started. Actually, today, episode 8 was released. It is called Hormonally Yours with the Hormone Dietitian, and it is available anywhere that podcasts are available. And we're, focusing on chats like this where I'm doing some solo educational episodes. I'm doing some guest expert interviews. And probably my favorite is I'm interviewing people who have PCOS and infertility and other hormone conditions to really talk about, what it's like from that side of things, what it's like, and maybe some changes that they've made that have helped them out. So those episodes in particular are very inspirational and, help people feel that they're not as alone in the condition. So yeah, really excited, committed to moving forward with that, already recording episodes for January and February. So just going to keep rolling into the new year.
Fantastic. Well, what else is in store for the Hormone Dietitian as we come up besides podcasting? Are you continuing just to do your courses and your one-on-one, or what is your goal for 2022?
Yeah, so I actually have a new product, which is really fun because it's short and it's a lot of information. It's called PCOS Meal Prep Made Easy, and so it's just quick little webinar. I pack a lot of information in there about how exactly to eat for PCOS, and then my course, the PCOS Root Cause Roadmap, is really my primary way to work with me right now. We've had over 650 women go through the course, and we focus on all of the different root causes of PCOS symptoms. And, sort of what we were talking about before, people ask me all the time, well, if your root causes are different than mine, well, how does a course help me? So I kind of give you everything in there. I'm like, here's what to do if you have this, here's what to do if you have that. And then I help you, build your personalized plan. So it's all the tools that I use when I'm working with people one-on-one, but in a do-it-yourself kind of manner. And you can kind of pick and choose. And I tell you, what lab tests to get to evaluate and what optimal ranges are and what to do if they're imbalanced. And so it really is it's for those people who really like to get all the answers and, are able to do it themselves.
Yeah, and also things change, right? We talked about the things changing in your life, and maybe you're trying to get pregnant, and so you have to worry about insulin resistance to try to ovulate. But then after you have the baby, you're now worried about inflammation because you're not sleeping and all the things. So having that information is still very valuable because things change throughout your life. So you never know if you're back to going, wait a minute, I think I'm now back to this category. So yeah, that's what I try to do as well in my courses, is to try to offer those 3 drivers to try to help people, because things change and you never know where you're going to be in even 6 months or a year from where you were. So it's important to have the tools in your toolbox to be able to help yourself. So that's great.
Yeah, and I always have given, the course has been in existence since January 2020, and I always have given lifetime access to it. So you can always go back in one of the bonuses that I offer is access to a Facebook group where I am in, and I have a course coach who is also an RD, who is also in the group monitoring questions and answering questions. So, you always have that support. But I think, really the beautiful thing that I wasn't expecting was the community. My community of people who've gone through that course are amazing. And, they oftentimes will answer someone's question before I even see it. And they're just so supportive of each other and cheer each other on with every ovulation or pregnancy test, or, if something happens like a miscarriage or something, everybody's just so supportive of everyone else. So that's kind of a nice side thing I wasn't expecting when I built the course.
That is a wonderful, well, community and accountability is always amazing when you're trying to, um, help heal your body. And also I think women, we're much more apt to want to that community and that accountability as well with each other, because we know women teaching women is amazing. So it's always important to be there. So that's great. I'm so excited, and I hope that your new option, your webinar, will be great. And we'll leave a link in the show notes so that people can check it out as well, and that way they can find you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here on this episode. And I've learned a lot, and I know that other women are going to be so grateful for the information that you've shared today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll end this one.